What's up, guys? This is Nate. So I've been thinking about putting together a book review. Right, I was going through my head thinking, what's something I'm working on right now that other people might be interested in, might get some value out of. And I thought of this book. It's called Unfuck Yourself, or Unf Yourself. I guess it depends on how politically correct you want to be. But this book was written by Gary John Bishop, a guy I never heard of. The book was actually given to me for Christmas by my wife, so that gives you any indication. If someone gives you a book like this, you should probably read it. But of course, got the book and did what I do with all my new books. I put it on my bookshelf with all the other books that I had meant to read, want to read, started, didn't finish, but it sat there. And about a couple of weeks ago, really caught my eye and picked it up, started reading it, and there's a lot that I like about the book. I'm not done with it, and I thought that was a perfect time to give some initial thoughts on it, especially if you've heard about it, if you've heard of him, just so you don't waste your time or energy or money on a book that won't really fit with you. So I've gone through the first portion of it, put some tabs in, review some of my initial thoughts, put some of my ideas out there, give you guys a quick overview of what I thought, and maybe motivate you to go buy it and read it. So far it's helpful, but let's jump in. I'll kind of give you an overview of it. So the first thing that I really like about it is just the layout of the book. You can see it's pretty basic, and I like that the spacing is like a 1.5 spacing. It's a little bit less overwhelming. It doesn't feel so textbooky, if that's a word. I'm pretty sure that's a word. If not, I'm using it. But the big thing to me is that it's not overwhelming. It doesn't feel like a normal textbook on psychology or something like that, even though in essence it's really what the root is. So the first thing that really jumps out is the first paragraph, not just because it's bold, but have you ever felt like a hamster on a wheel, furiously churning your way through life but somehow going nowhere? Definitely felt that way. I don't know about you, I only speak for myself, but sometimes it feels like you're just churning and churning and churning. I wouldn't even go as far to say 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because that gives some sense of directionality that I don't always feel like is evident in life, but it's definitely something I can relate to, and I like that he starts the book off with something that kind of grabs you and pulls you in. Something that if you're thinking that, or if you've thought that before, instantly, okay, yeah, maybe this guy is going to talk about some things I need help with. So moving through the first half of the book, it's basically just talking about self-talk, which is a very interesting concept, something that I think has a negative connotation because people think of it as woo-woo, positive psychology, but that's not really where he's going. One of the things that he mentions that I really like is this kind of self-talk doesn't make your life any easier. Right? He's talking about negative self-talk. The more you tell yourself how hard something is, the harder it will actually seem. Unfortunately, since we are constantly listening to a steady stream of our automatic inner thoughts and have become so accustomed to the critical voice in our heads, we often don't realize how negative thoughts impact our mood and behavior in any given moment, and as a result, we end up doing or not doing things our rational mind wants us to do. I think that is very insightful. You do get to a point, or at least I've noticed, that you don't even realize the dialogue you have going on in your head. It's not an intentional decision. I don't wake up one day and think, man, I should really be hard on myself, or man, I should really be negative, or man, I really think I should just beat myself up over this mistake. But you get so used to it, you can develop such a innate pattern that you're just constantly talking to yourself in an unfriendly way, and it's so normal that you can't even catch yourself to pattern disrupt. So I love that piece. I love the fact that he's saying that it's automatic inner thoughts. I think that's a very, very good description. So that's one thing that jumped out to me in the first half. Moving on, he's talking about how language changes our lives. And I think that it's definitely something you take for granted. You learn to speak so early. I think it's not something that is thought of as a powerful tool. It's not like driving a car that you have to learn to do when you're of a certain age. You can talk and say some pretty hurtful or positive things at a very young age, and I think you just assume that away, and your language is just assumed away, and you don't really give any time or credence to it. And I think it's an interesting way to think about it. So another part that I like, and this is where he really starts to touch on philosophy, which is what kind of made me raise an eyebrow. He's talking about Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius, Stoic philosopher, turned Roman emperor, said, "Here is a rule to remember in the future. When anything tempts you to feel bitter, not this is misfortune, but to bear this worthily is good fortune." So I love the Stoics. It's really big right now. Ryan Holiday's big into it. Tim Ferriss is big into it. There's a lot of books that have been written. Philosophy, specifically the Stoics, have been around for thousands of years. It's nothing new, but it's very applicable, especially this day and age where, everything is a distraction, everything is a comparison. I found a lot of great applications, so I do like that he's tying into those concepts, so that feels relatable to me. I've read some books on Stoicism. I'm an avid Ryan Holiday fan and Tim Ferriss listener, and they talk about it all the time. So that's very interesting to me. And for those of you who haven't read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, it's a great book. You should read it. It'll definitely change your life, or not. And if it doesn't, that sucks for you. So let's keep going. Another thing that was said by the Stoics that I didn't have bookmarked, but it just caught my eye: reject your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears. We're not talking physical injuries, right? If your leg got cut off and you think, man, my leg didn't get cut off, your leg still got cut off. But as far as if someone hurt you, right? If you feel betrayed by someone, that is something that you create in your mind, right? There's no actual betrayal if you don't think there is, right? And I know that sounds a little bit far-reaching, but just think about it a little bit. Think about separating your thoughts and your feelings, and I think that might make some sense. So this next one that I have bookmarked really stuck to me. I actually posted on Instagram something to this effect, but put that up there so you guys can see it. It's not that you have to find the answer, you are the answer. It's very interesting, and there's a tremendous amount of responsibility in that. I think so often you can get to a point where you just stop taking responsibility for your situation. You feel like it's a matter of circumstance, or it's outside of your control. And in reality, especially when it comes to your thoughts, your inner voices, your inner dialogue, totally 100% controlled by your mind. So if you're looking for some external factor to change that, it's very unlikely that will have a lasting effect. Some things might have short-term effects, shot in the pan, New Year's resolution, you read some book and got rah-rah, but you don't actually change anything fundamentally, or pattern disrupt, which is another big theme. I think that sometimes we're waiting around for the wrong things to come, or the wrong people to save us, right? They say that if you're waiting around for the cavalry, you have to realize that you are the cavalry, right? So it's up to you. The onus is on you. I love that point. Let's see another good point. We can determine our emotions by steering our thoughts. We can shape those thoughts by being conscious of and diligent about our words and the kind of language we engage in. A lot of this will come down to your basic tolerance of your current mindset and your willingness to change it. So much of that I like, especially the basic tolerance of your current mindset. So if you get what you tolerate, right? So if you're okay with negative thinking in your life or underachieving or whatever it might be, then you're just going to stay there. If you don't like it, you think there's something more, then this is an opportunity for you specifically to change that intentionally with the idea that you're going to improve your mindset with and through a willingness to change. So I love that piece as well. And then ending this first section, he starts to touch on assertive self-talk, which I really like. I never thought about this. Maybe it's too close to even realize that there's a difference. But the example that he uses are pretty compelling. Starts to talk in terms of I am, or I embrace, or I accept, or I assert, all of which are powerful and commanding uses of language rather than the narrative of I will. And I think that that's big in the sense of not creating a story and putting things off to say, right now is not a good time for you to have self-discipline, for you to go to the gym, for you to eat healthy. I mean, those are just a few things that I think about. But saying that you are an athlete fundamentally changes your mindset compared to, when it comes to fitness, compared to thinking I'm not an athlete. So just think of the standards that you set for athletes, right? If you start to consider yourself an athlete, even though not professional, right? But if you want to have an athlete's body, you have to start thinking about that up front and holding yourself to that standard, right? Putting it off to say, I will be athletic, gives yourself a free pass, but also you just diminished your own value because you're saying you are not athletic right now. And from a mindset standpoint, I think that just undermines your intention, right? So I think that that's a very good example. Same thing with communication, leadership. Those are just a few things that came to mind. But I really like so far in the book how he's kind of laid it out. I like that he's touched on some Stoicism. I think that'll probably be interwoven. Is that how you say it? Or interweaved? I'm pretty sure it's interwoven, but throughout the book. So so far so good. I'm definitely going to keep reading it. I'll probably do another video when I get done with it. Let you guys know what I thought. So far I highly recommend it. This guy Gary John Bishop, I'd never heard of him before, but from his website, looks like he's been into coaching for about 10 years. I think that coaching in general is a little bit saturated right now, but his approach is urban philosophy, which is basically philosophy that's applicable today, which is a very common theme in Stoicism. Granted, they weren't writing this thinking, oh, people are going to have to battle with technology, so let me write these words of wisdom, but it is a very applicable philosophy. So I do imagine a lot of his stuff will probably have a Stoic undertone, which is great because I'm a big fan. So if you haven't, go check out the book, Unfuck Yourself or Unf Yourself. I'm not really sure you're supposed to read that, but nonetheless, Gary John Bishop, so far so good. Keep you guys updated. Peace.